Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Hey miners, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. Here we have it, Wednesday afternoon. Bitcoin is flirting with new all-time highs once again, getting close to $95,000 at one point this morning, currently trading hands around $94,000. Now this begs the question, at what point is Bitcoin going to cross the $100,000 US psychological milestone? And that's the exact question we're looking to answer in today's video. Now, in addition to Bitcoin price, we're also going to be taking a look at some recent news in the Bitcoin mining space and of course our mid-morning market update. Before we get into that though, take a second, smash the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below how you're feeling towards the Bitcoin miners right now, when you think Bitcoin will cross $100,000, and where you rank in our current Q4 Miner Madness trading competition. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay, guys, so that's right. Wednesday afternoon here. Anthony Power and I are back on a traditional podcast. Anthony, we've been extremely busy over the last 2 weeks with quarterly earnings. We've hosted a number, probably about a dozen of the CEOs. Fantastic interviews so far. I'll tell you guys a little insight here. I actually have a treadmill in my office. So every time we do a video, I'll film the video. I do all the editing on the treadmill. And Anthony, I'll tell you, I'm down 11 pounds so far in the month of November based on the earnings interview schedule we have. So that tells you how busy we are. A lot of news to talk about today. Bitcoin continuing to hit all-time highs. A flurry of information. How are you feeling over there in the UK?
Feeling good. I think every time we do a podcast, I eat a couple of Mars bars. So I've actually put on 11 pounds since we started earnings in November. So yeah, I've found your 11 pounds.
Hey, you know what? We just booked in for Mining Disrupt in Florida. So both of us, the New Year's resolution, Anthony, we'll get those beach bodies ready. We booked in for Florida. We booked in for Vegas for the big Bitcoin conference and hopefully speaking at both events. So a great schedule for 2025. Excited to see where power mining analysis ends up next year. With that being said, though, Anthony, we wanted to focus on today. The markets themselves, a little bit mixed. You use the terminology a yo-yo. So Bitcoin continuing to press upwards, hitting 95,000 or very close to it, which is ironically my first sell price, which we covered in a prior video. Currently trading hands right around 94,000 though. So before we get into the mid-morning miner update, Bitcoin itself just relentlessly moving up and to the right, hey?
Yeah, I tweeted last night when it went through 94,000 for the first time, and it has been relentless since the election results. And we've talked about the Bitcoin mining stocks being correlated with Bitcoin. Well, they haven't been as correlated as they have in previous periods, and MicroStrategy is certainly having its time as probably the most correlated stock with Bitcoin at the moment. I mean, that has risen relentlessly. I'm talking even from the start of November, that stock is up $200. And I know there was people out there that were thinking at $300 a share they were taking profits because it had rose. It's risen nearly 900% this year. 900% this year. That's phenomenal. And if you were to buy MicroStrategy before it dipped into Bitcoin itself, you could have picked that stock up for $10 a share, equivalent. And today's price, it was touching $500 before the podcast. It might have even broke through that period there today. But market capitalization over 100 billion. It's a monster stock. It's valued probably now twice as much as all the mining companies added together, and that's really correlating well with the Bitcoin price. We haven't seen the miners do that to any extent really in the last few months. We've seen a sort of like a peel away. We're still, for all these stocks, we're still a long way from 52-week highs. So that tells you the mining stocks aren't really, as correlated as MicroStrategy. And there are some other ones. I think Coin as well, you could put in the MicroStrategy camp. So, they're as pure play Bitcoin correlation as you can. We know that Marathon Digital are trying to use this strategy now. They're about to go out and spend $1 billion on more Bitcoin, and we'll cover that in a little bit later in the podcast. But yeah, we've got a couple of mining stocks up today. I mean, Mara's up today by 15%. That's had a nice run. And some of the mining stocks pre-market were in green territory. I think I looked half an hour before pre-market, every miner was in green territory. And literally, we said this before, as soon as America switched on, there was a lot of red there. And then, we were doing a podcast earlier with Sam Tabar, and the prices were going up again, and then they've come down. So it's been a bit of a yo-yo day today. There's no reason. Maybe there's maybe some action from the institutions to get the price down so they could go in there and get the best price for the miners, because I do see a run in the miners. If we can break the 100,000, we don't pull back significantly. I see a run in the miners. I listened to the Michael Saylor podcast last night with he was on a Spaces meeting with Senator Loomis and Van Eck, one of the big fund managers, and he was as bullish as anything. I mean, I was really perked up after that Spaces meeting, because he's suggesting, from his perspective, he expects Bitcoin to achieve 29% year-on-year growth now for the next foreseeable future. And he says, unless you can come through with an asset class that can beat 29%, don't bother calling. So, he's put his cards on the table, and to be honest with you, he hasn't been far wrong up to now. So, I'm in the Saylor camp. I think Bitcoin is going to fly. We'll cover more things that will make it fly later in the podcast as well. But yeah, Bitcoin is up at all-time high today. Mining stocks, up and down. A couple of stocks that stand out, apart from Marathon, are Bitdeer. Bitdeer released their results this week, had similar results to what other miners have got. But if you listen to the diversification that company's got, I mean, they're on the third generation mining machine this year. That's 3 in 1 year. And, from what we gather, normally you can come out with 1 generation improvement a year. That's good enough. If you can get 1 generation upgrade a year. Think about Apple and the Apple phone. They bring one out every couple of years, So Bitdeer are on the 3rd generation mine this year, and they're advanced now on bringing out Seal Miner 3, which is a 10 joules a terahash. Their Seal Miner 2 is already achieving, when it's underclocked, 13.5 joules a terahash, which is better than the actual S21 Pro, which is their largest competitor, Bitmain, what they produce at the moment. So maybe some of that update, some of that information that came out has sparked the market a little bit. I mean, we've talked many times about Bitdeer this last year, explaining that they're not just a Bitcoin miner. If you look at Bitcoin mining, it's actually a small part of the business. So that share price is up today, and our old favorite, we were there on June the 3rd June the 12th, but the announcement on June the 3rd that Core Scientific had to deal with CoreWeave, and so whenever the mining stocks are red, you normally find Core Scientific in positive territory. People seem to move back into Core Scientific. They know the HPC revenues are more predictable than Bitcoin mining, although at 94,000, I think most miners are going to be green come this next quarter. I predicted all the miners would be red, and only one disappointed me in that, and was actually had a green one, and that was Hut 8, and we know why why they had a positive quarter. But this next quarter will be a bumper quarter for some of those miners, especially the ones that have got the hodl, because if you think about the Bitcoin price at the end of September, it was 62,000, and it's 94 now. End of December, if it's above 100,000, you could have a $40,000 per coin unrealized gain. And some of those mining companies have got in excess of 10,000, and one's going to have in excess of 30,000 coins, nearly 40,000 coins come the end of December. So that's something worth thinking about now. So I think that we've got time. These mining stocks will catch up. They have done before. We saw it earlier in March this year. We saw it in June this year when a lot of miners started peaking. Then look at IREN. They were $15.50 in June. Today they're around about the $10 mark. So they've got a long way to get to their 52-week high. And I expect that to, start getting close to that as we go through that 100K barrier.
Yeah, as do I. We had Steve Gutterman, the new CEO, on from Gryphon Digital Mining. As he said, a 50% increase in top line revenue doesn't hurt anyone in the industry. You mentioned we just came off almost dismal Q3, a lot of headwinds for the miners, a lot of red across the board. They haven't yet caught up to the moves we've seen in MicroStrategy, Coin, or Bitcoin, but I do think that's coming, Anthony. And as you say, Q4 looking to be a bumper or blockbuster quarter for the miners, particularly the ones with a large Bitcoin hodl on balance sheet. So with that being said, you mentioned you're in the Saylor camp. Now I am as well. I picked up some shares of MSTU 2 weeks ago, Anthony. I'm up about 140%, 7 or 8 grand on these shares. Just incredible the amount of people that are looking to get involved with MicroStrategy or this 2 times levered proxy. So again, a great example of why you guys may want to take a look at our Patreons. I know, Anthony, you post all of your trades, buys and sells in there, as do I, but definitely some big action in the market right now. The other point I wanted to make on Saylor, he's actually presenting to the board of Microsoft here, trying to get some of these big blue chips on board with the Bitcoin balance sheet. So I wanted to ask you, Anthony, do you think Q4 is when we may start to see, I'll position it like this. We've already seen a lot of the small micro caps, mid caps starting to buy Bitcoin. Do you think Q4 is when we start to see some of these big blue chips outside of Tesla put Bitcoin on the balance sheet?
Yeah, I mean, so we know that Microsoft are having a vote very shortly to determine whether the company should put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and that's going to be down to the shareholders. And guess who's turning up for that presentation? Michael Saylor. So he's going to present to the shareholders of Microsoft, and we've been fortunate to sit in front of Michael Saylor at Nashville this year, and I've heard that speech many, many times. If he can't get them to make a yes decision on that vote, nobody can. You're bringing in the biggest gun in the world in terms of Bitcoin strategy there, and if he can articulate half as well as he articulated last night on a Spaces meeting, which 43,000 people were listening into, nobody can. And as I say, he's the number one bull in the space, in the Bitcoin space, and hasn't been wrong up to now. So I think there'll be a lot more of these large market caps moving into the space and putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet because they have to. You haven't got a stock or an asset class that can deliver the same returns as Bitcoin. Nothing can. That's been proven now. It's just a case of it's not a case of if Bitcoin gets towards gold. It's a case of when now. It's the timing now, and it could happen far quicker than people are even anticipating. We've seen what's happened this year. It's a different cycle in terms of what's happened. The ETFs were never around in previous cycles. They've been eating up Bitcoin 10, 20 times more than it's been mined. So that will start putting more pressure on the Bitcoin price because there's less Bitcoin available to buy. I said before, I'm not selling mine. I don't think you're selling yours either. So let's see how these next 4 or 5 weeks go. But there's going to be some interesting times now before Christmas and post Christmas. What happens to that Bitcoin price? I think I think it's teed up so that when it goes through, it stays through. I don't think we'll see as big a pullback as we're expecting because I think this is just the start of the journey. And I think if people are lucky to get Bitcoin now with a 9 in front of the price, they'll be wishing they had in a few weeks, maybe in a few months' time.
I was going to say, not only am I not selling, I'm continuing to buy. I'm going the other way, Anthony. Now, this is really a great segue. We talk about Michael Saylor influencing Microsoft to potentially put Bitcoin on balance sheet. He's also chummed up with Fred Thiel, the CEO of Marathon, to help them put Bitcoin on balance sheet. So I know this news came out a couple days ago, Anthony, but I just wanted to stress what we're seeing in front of our eyes here in terms of the shift of strategy with Marathon and the fact that these companies, when they start to command a market cap like this, are able to access 0% interest debt. which is truly incredible. So I wanted you to walk through just the thinking here, why this model is so lucrative for MicroStrategy, and how you think Marathon may fare with this endeavor.
Yeah, I mean, it's we know that MicroStrategy have used this strategy to grow their balance sheet, and it's worked really well. Marathon have also,
Hold
with
on, you said
regards to,
Microsoft. You said Microsoft.
sorry, we know that MicroStrategy have used the strategy of convertible notes to raise debt and buy Bitcoin has worked really effectively for them. And you look at even when they've had to use an interest rate, it's been negligible. It's been half a basis point or 1 basis point, or very, very low. Marathon Digital also, they've been really prudent on their convertible notes. Remember, in 2021 they took out a large convertible note there, I think around about 700 million. That was for 1%, and that was a time when they weren't buying Bitcoin. This one here is at 0%. Now there are some, it's not everything zero. These are convertible notes, so they will convert to shares in the future. But the conversion price is only just over $25. So, we've seen Marathon share price today goes, closing in on $23 today. This is a conversion price that they can take advantage of in 2030. So, this is potentially great for people to have, a proxy to Bitcoin through Marathon Digital, because Marathon Digital is literally going to be, again, with having that size of hodl, is going to be more correlated with Bitcoin and maybe some of the other mining stocks. And yes, you're going to have people saying, well, they should look at producing Bitcoin mining more cheaply. And I'm sort of like in the camp as to why they need to sort that problem out as well. But if you've got the funding there to deliver instant Bitcoin, and you think the Bitcoin price is going to rally, then why not have it as part of your business? Maybe Marathon end up moving away from Bitcoin mining and focusing on this type of business going forward. Who knows? But one thing to say about Fred is he likes a strategy, and he's able to follow a number of strategies over the last few years, and hopefully he gets this one right.
Yeah, most definitely. I do think the relationship between him and Michael Saylor can't be underestimated. Michael Saylor is a real visionary in this space, almost an Elon Musk type of figure, and we've seen how the relationship Elon and Trump can really benefit these companies. So it'll be interesting to see how these two companies grow in unison or tandem together. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, and this is actually an interesting kind of compare and contrast, DMG went out and raised money as well. Now, unlike Marathon, DMG is a smaller Canadian-based miner. They don't have access to the same type of capital structure, same type of interest rates. So DMG, again, needing to grow, needing to finance the heavy CapEx investment of Bitcoin mining, but going about it a little bit differently.
Yeah, they've had to go out and effectively tell the market they're going to dilute a chunk of shares. When a company does that, and we've had this discussion before, if you think of a company with 100 shares and the share price is $1 per share, the value of the shares, that means the company's got $100. If you're going to issue 15 more shares, the company doesn't grow automatically to $115. It stays at $100, but the share price effectively reduces. You've diluted the number of shares. So this is the difference when companies use this, and perhaps DMG haven't got the opportunity. I don't think some of the Canadian miners, maybe on some of the indexes, that they have the opportunity to go for an ATM. Argo Blockchain are in the same position. They've had to use dilution methods, and when you do a dilution, you're offering the shares at a discount premium to the actual share price. So when this was initially announced, the share price did plummet quite considerably to take account of that dilution. But DMG, have to raise capital if they want to grow. They've just managed to bring in 4,550 T21 miners and get their hash rate to over 1.65 exahash. So that was a nice improvement. Get their efficiency down to 22. So with their energy price and an efficient fleet, they're bringing in good profits. They want to grow further, you've got to raise capital, and this is one of the levers they've been able to use. And they've raised just over $17 million by doing this. And there's also potentially a number of warrants that can be exercised at a slightly higher price of 65 cents, and those can be exercised in the future. And that will bring in more capital to be used down the line. So there's obviously a hope if the share price rises because they're a relatively good operational miner as well. They're in the top half of my tables on a month by month basis, so they can mine Bitcoin with the best of them. If they produce good numbers going forward, they've got a reasonably good balance sheet, so they've got strength on there. But they are a small miner. We've had this discussion about how do these small miners grow to the next step. DMG are using this as one of their levers to start, looking at providing some funding for their HPC project, maybe bring some more miners in, replace some of the older fleets. So they've got capital on the table there that'll get through them this next part of the next part of the year. And if they can grow to the next level, that might offer another type of lever to pull. Now, bear in mind, at the last month, they had about 400, just under 400 Bitcoin. So at today's value of Bitcoin, that's heading towards $40 million of Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So again, they have leverage there to use that to grow even further. So in a way, they don't have the benefit of the ATM. Other companies are issuing far more shares than DMG, but because the market doesn't know on a day-to-day basis, they can't react on a day-to-day basis. We've seen some companies, use up to 50 million shares in a quarter, and you only find out when the earnings results come out, which is literally 4 months after they started doing it. So, DMG have to go to the market, have to tell everyone we're going to do this, and therefore the market knows, anticipates it, reprices the stock accordingly, and then the stock then has to start recovering based on good news from the fact they've invested and they're growing that way.
Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now.
Sure. Yeah, and it really can't be underpinned enough. The importance of the timing of this Bitcoin bull run for some of these small miners really came at the perfect time as they were going through these fleet upgrades, giving them a little bit more breathing room. The other thing you brought up, and again, a timely remark here, Anthony, you talk about access to capital. We've heard from a few of the CEOs outside of the United States the importance of maybe redomiciling or moving their headquarters to the United States for that access to capital being one, and then obviously the benefits of being included in the indices. So again, continuing to come up. Will be interesting to see by the end of next year how many of these foreign companies have now moved over to the United States side of things here as well. Now, a couple more press releases. You mentioned Core Scientific was performing well today. Almost an inverse of the other miners, which is interesting. And I'm looking at that really as a portfolio balancer or kind of a diversified, still proxy on Bitcoin, but a little bit diversified compared to the other miners. They came out with 2 press releases, breaking ground on a 100 megawatt site and then a lease extension in Denton. So I'll let you pick which one you go through first there, Anthony, but good news and a couple steps in the right direction for Core Scientific.
Yeah, I'll take the Muskogee, breaking ground there. So we know that Core Scientific have a really large contract in terms of a HPC contract with CoreWeave. Over 500 megawatts required. And if you think about the number of sites, I think they're using 5 sites to deliver that. And this is one of those sites they're talking about there. So this is the Muskogee site, and they've just literally, broken ground there. It's 100 megawatts, and that provides 70 megawatts of HPC IT power with 30 megawatts of an ancillary supporting system. So it's not about just the HPC. You've got to have the supporting power of the facility.
And just to jump in there, Anthony, for people who are maybe not super familiar with data center construction, when you talk about the actual HPC AI megawatts, that's going to be powering the GPUs themselves, doing the calculations and obviously the work. The ancillary services or the additional 30%, and we heard this in Denton as well, that's going to go towards things like security, air conditioning, lighting the buildings. That's actually the operations of the facility itself. So just wanted to make a differentiation there, Anthony, for people who are maybe unclear on how that power is split out.
Yeah, absolutely. So the second update we have from Core Scientific today was with the City of Denton, and they've basically agreed an expansion of the land that Core Scientific currently lease, which was 31 acres. It's now going to increase to 78 acres. And on that land itself, they had access to 297 megawatts of power. That's been increased to 394 megawatts of power. And this expansion itself is projected to bring in a small amount of 6.1 billion in real property investment. So another big tick in the box there for Core Scientific and their progress to achieve their 500 megawatts with Core Scientific. And bear in mind, Adam's already thinking about another 130 megawatts with another client. So expect more updates from Core Scientific on that piece of news. That would take them, I would say, in excess of a $10 billion contract with circa close to $7 to $7.5 billion in net profit based on the pricing from their contract with CoreWeave. So if they can get close to the same sort of deal with the second customer, you're looking at a major deal. And this is only positive news again for Core Scientific. Everything seems to be going green at the moment for them. The share price is up today. It's been a great year for the company. Second largest market capitalization of all the mining companies behind Marathon. So if you remember when they came out of Chapter 11, a year ago we were talking about when would they come out of Chapter 11. Now we're talking about they're going to be the biggest mining company in the world in terms of market capitalization when these revenues start coming through. So another big tick in the box for Core Scientific today.
No kidding. Onward and upward for Adam Sullivan, Core Scientific. You talk about them being one of the biggest Bitcoin mining companies. They're quickly becoming one of the biggest HPC data center companies in the United States as well. So just phenomenal growth there. I can only imagine what our good friend Wes's portfolio balance looks like if he's still holding those core shares and warrants, Anthony. Now, as we transition over to the political realm here, we want to talk about Dennis Porter. Interestingly enough, though, I saw from HODL 15, the Kingdom of Bhutan has put out their Bitcoin balance in excess of 1.1 billion now. So I just thought this was interesting, Anthony. We had Bitdeer on yesterday. They obviously have a relationship with Bhutan as well. Jeff was talking about that on the program, but very interesting there. Continuing along, though, Dennis Porter, he was just on the channel talking about Satoshi Action Fund and the Mining Disrupt conference. Luckily for us, we're helping him put this conference together, select some of the panels, and going to be going down there to support. He's really been on a tear here since the election, a tremendous amount of interest, people reaching out for education, support on adopting Bitcoin strategic reserves. He's now saying he's been approached by multiple different nation states, one in Europe, one in Latin America, to talk about this strategic reserve concept. And in addition to that, came out with a tweet stating that Senator Loomis's bill is now the fourth most viewed bill ever in the United States, I guess, Bill Depository or whatever this platform is, Anthony. Just tremendous interest from the general public, both sides of the aisle, Democratic, Republican, all around the world. Doesn't seem to matter where you come from or what your beliefs are. Bitcoin seems to be resonating.
Yeah, absolutely. And, great that Dennis is being given this accolade. Now he's going to head up the Strategic Reserve on behalf of Donald Trump. He'll be the president again in a very short space of time. So, it's great news all around. And this is what I said earlier in the podcast. The news that's coming out now is just one good news story after another good news story. I'm waiting to see if there's any bad news stories. Go back a year ago, 18 months ago, there was probably two or three bad news stories in the Bitcoin mining space to actually good news stories. There's always a concern about, do you remember Bitcoin uses up more energy than the likes of Norway or Finland or a small country? And the use of Bitcoin in states would raise the power cost because demand would be so high. It's totally opposite. Bitcoin miners go in there and use the power when the demand is low. They balance the grid. people should understand what that means. So there's, if you've got 4 gigawatts of power and you're using, 3.5 to 4 gigawatts during the day at the peak times, yes, you don't want other users going in there. But when it drops to say 1 gigawatt at night because people aren't switching the kettle on when they're sleeping, the Bitcoin miners can use it. So, there doesn't seem to be many of the bad news stories anymore now. There's a lot more positivity, a lot more adoption, a lot more companies taking. Every day we're seeing a new article saying some pension fund is now taking Bitcoin on. If Microsoft take this up and put it on their balance sheet, I think it's game over because, they're one of the sort of like 4 biggest companies in the world. And it's only a matter of time that everybody follows their suit. So, time is of the essence now. We'll see movements now over this next sort of 5 or 6 weeks, get through that 100 barrier. We talked before about will there be a pullback? There might be a small pullback, but the pullbacks at the moment are very, very small compared to what they've reasoned. This looks and feels like a different cycle compared to others. And I can only see, with all the news stories we've been discussing over the last week or so, more upside.
I can too, Anthony, and that's why we called it $100,000 Bitcoin incoming, you guys. Too many good news stories, too much momentum, too much FOMO to slow Bitcoin down at this point. It'll be interesting to see where it ends up. The other thing that's going to be interesting as companies adopt this Bitcoin balance sheet strategy is how our non-HODL miners adjust to that. They may soon be the only companies in the world not holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet. The last thing I wanted to leave you guys with, and realistically, the number that matters most in the mining space is hash price. So I know we've been slightly disappointed, Anthony. We've seen MicroStrategy run. We've seen Coin run. We're waiting for our beloved Bitcoin miners to run, which we both believe they will. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin price, which impacts hash price, is really the key metric to watch. And that's moving up in a big direction now north of $61.
No, absolutely. We were talking not that long ago, hash price being under $40 and how the miners were struggling. Most of Q3, the quarter we're just talking about through earnings, it was at $40 for most of that period. All of a sudden now we're at $60. That's a 50% increase in revenues. And that will appear on their Q4 or their final quarter of 2024 results. For some companies, it'll be Q1. For some companies, it'll be Q3. But for the majority of companies, it'll be Q4. So we'll see a really good impact to their figures. And it's much needed because, these mining companies, because of the fact that there is cycles of Bitcoin, there are far more quarters in the last sort of like, look at the last 8 periods where miners have been actually producing net losses and the net incomes. So Q4, I'll predict now with the Bitcoin price as it is at the moment, it stays above 90,000. There'll be plenty of green across the board, the whole board for Bitcoin miners at the end of this next quarter.
There certainly will. $100,000 price incoming. My target price by year end is $1 off, $99,999. We'll see how close we land to that. You guys, if you're still watching the video at this point, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. Let us know how you're feeling about the Bitcoin mining stocks in the comment section below. If you've started to move money into other areas of the market or if you're holding strong here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.